The words that hurt me most in my life didn't come from a wealthy employer. They didn't come from some arrogant rich kid in a mansion. They didn't come from anyone on the outside. They came from my mom. It was a Sunday in May, dinner at my Aunt Cheryl's house in Stockton, the kind of family gathering that starts with hugs and ends with someone driving home in silence. There were about 20 people crowded around, folding tables pushed together in the living room. I had taken the bus to get there, 2.5 hours from the neighborhood where I rented a room in Los Angeles, with a transfer at Union Station. I was 26 years old, working as a housekeeper for a family in Bel Air, taking night classes, and saving money with a discipline that nobody around me understood. My cousin Denise had just bought a car, a used Corolla, financed over 5 years, but a car. She pulled up in front of Aunt Cheryl's house, honked twice like she was arriving at a parade, and everyone poured outside to look at it. Hands on the hood, photos, cheering, laughter. Then my mom looked at me, really looked at me, with that expression I had known since childhood, half wounded pride and half a shame she didn't know how to name, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Vanessa still takes the bus everywhere. 2 years in LA, and nothing to show for it." Half a second of silence, then laughter. Aunt Cheryl, my cousin Brianna, my Uncle Raymond, who only opened his mouth to cut someone down. Everyone laughed, not out of pure cruelty, in the worst way, the way people laugh when they think they're just telling the truth. I smiled, I picked up my plate, and I stored that moment somewhere inside myself that took months to understand. It wasn't anger, it was fuel. My mom had no idea, she couldn't have known, that inside the tote bag I'd hung on Aunt Cheryl's coat rack that afternoon, there was a black notebook with 138 handwritten pages. Business plan, cash flow projections, supplier research, company name, the address of a commercial space I had visited 4 times. I was exactly 4 months and 9 days away from opening my own business, but she was going to find out on my terms, on my schedule, with my car parked in front of her house. If someone in your own family has ever humiliated you, someone who should have been in your corner from day one, tell me about it in the comments. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, let me know where you're watching from, because this story is about the kind of pain nobody talks about, the kind that starts at home. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Vanessa. I was born and raised in Stockton, California, the only child of Diane, my mom, and a father who left when I was 6 and became a vague memory in a photo my mom kept in her wallet. My mom worked her whole life at a distribution warehouse on the edge of town, up at 4:30 in the morning, on her feet for 10 hours, home by 6 with her back aching and her ankles swollen. She never complained, never asked anyone for help. She raised a child alone on what she earned, and she made sure to remind everyone of that regularly. The problem was she used her own sacrifice as the measuring stick for everyone else's. For my mom, real effort was what hurt your body. It was the warehouse, the overtime, the union rep, the workers' comp paperwork, what I was building, studying at night, working during the day, filling notebooks with plans that she couldn't see. To her, I was a 26-year-old woman cleaning other people's houses and riding the bus, hadn't gotten anywhere, period. I understood where it came from. That didn't make it hurt less. When I was 19, I got into a business administration program at a state school in Stockton. I worked retail to cover what my financial aid didn't. My mom didn't say congratulations, she said, "I hope it doesn't turn out to be a waste of time." I kept going. In my second year, the warehouse where she worked announced layoffs. She wasn't cut, but the fear changed her for months. She shut down, got scared. And when people are scared, they sometimes go after whoever is closest. I was closest. In my 3rd year, I had to take a leave of absence. My aid package was reduced. The retail job wasn't covering the gap, and I made a decision that seemed practical at the time, but that my mom never fully forgave me for. I moved to Los Angeles. There was a position as a housekeeper with a family in Bel Air, with a formal work agreement, paid time off, and a salary of $3,800 a month. More than I was making in retail. The plan was simple. Work 2 years, save money, finish my degree, open the business. "You're going to drop out of college to clean rich people's houses?" was what my mom said. I went anyway. The family that hired me in Bel Air was the Hargroves, Mr. Douglas, a corporate attorney, 54 years old, and Dr. Patricia, a plastic surgeon, 48. 2 adult children who lived out of state. 5-bedroom house plus a service quarters, heated pool, landscaped grounds with automated irrigation, a 4-car garage. They had another staff member, a groundskeeper named Harold who came 3 times a week. Day to day, the house was my responsibility. Dr. Patricia ran the interview with the efficiency of someone who had hired many people and been disappointed by most of them. She asked about prior experience. I'd worked as a cleaning crew supervisor at an office complex in Stockton for over a year before moving. About my schedule, whether I had children, whether I'd had any issues with previous employers. I answered everything directly. She took notes in a leather planner. At the end, she told me she'd be in touch within 2 business days. She called the next morning. I was hired. The arrangement was formal from day one. Dr. Patricia made a point of that in the interview, as if it were a special courtesy rather than a basic obligation. Documented employment, paid sick days, 2 weeks of vacation per year, federal holidays, Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6, overtime if needed, and it would be compensated. She was demanding but consistent. She had clear expectations. The daily task list was typed and laminated on the inside of the pantry door, with a column for me to initial each item when complete. She checked. She rarely found anything wrong, but when she did, she said so plainly, without cruelty, but without softening it either. "This wasn't done right, Vanessa. Please redo it before you leave today." I redid it. No argument, because she was right. Mr. Douglas was barely present, out by 6:30 in the morning, back after 9 at night. When he came home, he gave a nod toward whatever room I was in and went to his office. No warmth, but no condescension either. It was workable. What wasn't workable was what happened on weekends when the older son came back to LA. Brandon Hargrove, 28 years old, lived in San Francisco, worked at a venture firm connected to his father's network, showed up in Bel Air once a month, and filled the house with the particular energy of someone who had grown up never hearing no. He wasn't malicious. He was something worse. He was indifferent. He called me the housekeeper, in the third person, even when I was standing right there. He left dishes in the sink after I'd already cleaned the kitchen. Once, he took a jacket I'd left folded in the service hallway. It was mine, bought the month before, and wore it out without a word. When he came back, he dropped it on the floor of the mudroom. He didn't even know it was mine. He never did anything directly to me, never humiliated me in front of anyone, but he had a way of looking at me, or rather, of not looking, that said everything. I didn't exist. I was part of the house, like the refrigerator or the washer, not a person, a function. I kept track of all of it. I always keep track. For the first 6 months in LA, I called my mom every week. I told her how the job was going, what the city was like, what I was learning. She listened. She asked if I was eating right, if I was keeping up with my bills, but she never asked about the plans, the notebook, the degree, the business. It was as if those things didn't exist because she couldn't see them. The calls got less frequent, not out of resentment, out of exhaustion. I worked Monday through Saturday, studied at night through an accredited online program I'd enrolled in, and spent Saturday and Sunday mornings filling spreadsheets in the black notebook. I didn't have the energy to explain myself, and she didn't ask in the right way. She asked in the way that already had an answer built in. "When are you moving back to Stockton?" That was the context for the Sunday in May. My cousin Denise had bought her car. My mom had said that in front of everyone. The family had laughed, and I had taken the same bus back to LA, the notebook in my bag, watching the Central Valley flatten out through the window at 11 at night. I didn't cry, not that night. I sat with the feeling, trying to figure out what it actually was. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something closer to a vacuum, like someone had let the air out of a balloon I'd spent months inflating. My mom's voice kept looping. 2 years in LA and nothing to show for it. The nothing. That was the word that stayed. Nothing. I had a notebook with 138 pages of handwritten plans. I had savings of just under $41,000. Every cent tracked, every purchase justified. I had a degree I was going to finish. I had a clarity about what I wanted to build that most people never develop in their entire lives. But to my mom, and that night, a little bit to myself too, because she'd planted something, I was nothing. That's the most dangerous thing that humiliation from someone you love can do. It speaks in your own voice. When a stranger puts you down, you can create distance. That's them, not you. But when it's your mother, The voice gets in differently. It uses the tone you grew up with. It knows exactly where you're still soft. And when you're tired, after 2 buses, after 6 days of work, after another Saturday morning study session, you open a crack and let that voice sit inside you like it's the truth. I stayed like that for a week, worked normally, didn't open the notebook once, didn't respond to texts from my friend Keisha who'd been checking in. I cooked, cleaned, caught the bus, came home, slept. No plan, no notebook, just going through the motions. That Friday, Dr. Patricia asked me to stay until 8 because she had people coming for dinner. I stayed, I served, cleaned up, put everything away. When I left, I caught the last bus with an open seat. The woman next to me, maybe 50, grocery bags on her lap, had a book open in her hands, not her phone. A book with real concentration, the kind of focus that means you're somewhere else entirely. I don't know why that hit me the way it did that night. Maybe it was the exhaustion. But I watched that woman on the bus, reading at 10 o'clock at night after what must have been a long day, and I thought, she didn't stop. Then I thought, I stopped. I took the black notebook out of my bag, opened it to page 138, picked up a pen, and wrote one sentence. I didn't stop, I just paused. Tomorrow it continues. And it did. The next morning I was up at 5:40, made coffee in my rented room in Koreatown, caught 2 buses to Bel Air, unlocked the service entrance with my key, put on my apron, and started the day. But something had shifted. There was a voice inside me I hadn't listened to in a while. A quiet voice, very calm, saying, enough. Not in the sense of quitting, in the sense of deciding. I was going to prove something, not to my mom, not to Aunt Cheryl, not to cousin Denise with her financed Corolla. I was going to prove it to myself first. Everything else would follow. That same month, I re-enrolled in my business administration program, now fully online, fully accredited, with a financial aid package I'd applied for the previous year that had come through without me even realizing it had been approved. It felt like a receipt from the universe. You were right, keep going. I spent the next several months in total silence about it, told no one, posted nothing on social media, kept working in Bel Air, kept saving, kept studying. My mom called once a month. I answered, said I was fine, asked how she was, said nothing about the notebook. Dr. Patricia noticed something had changed in me. One afternoon she stopped me in the kitchen and said, without preamble, "You're working towards something, aren't you?" I looked at her. She said, "You don't have to answer. I just wanted you to know I see it." And she walked away. That meant more than a lot of things, but it was September that brought what I hadn't planned for. It was a Saturday morning, and I was polishing the hardwood floor in the second-floor hallway when I heard voices from the back balcony. Brandon had arrived Friday, with 3 friends this time, guys his age, one of them recording their arrival on his phone like it was content. They'd been up late. I'd heard laughter past midnight, and Saturday morning I was cleaning up after them. I was almost done with the hallway when one of them opened the balcony door and walked in without looking, nearly walked into me, stepped back, and made a face like he'd almost tripped over something. "Whoa," he said, then called out to Brandon, "Bro, your housekeeper's in the hallway." Brandon appeared in the doorway, looked at me, and said, with a smile that wasn't mean, it was worse, it was completely unaware, "You can leave the hallway for later. We're going to be going back and forth a lot today." That wasn't what got to me. What got to me was what came next. One of the friends, I never knew his name, said, not quite under his breath, "Imagine being a housekeeper in a place like this, cleaning up after other people your whole life." And Brandon responded, already turning back to the balcony, "Everyone ends up where they chose to be. Everyone ends up where they chose to be." I stood in the hallway for about 10 seconds, cloth in my hand, bucket beside me, the smell of wood polish in the air. Everyone ends up where they chose to be, as if I had chosen this out of a lack of ambition, as if the hallway I was kneeling on was the ceiling of my life. I went to the service bathroom, closed the door, stayed there for 2 minutes. Then I opened the door, went back to the hallway, and finished the job. Because the work was mine. Their house, but the work was mine, and I always finish my work right. But when I went downstairs to the service quarters at the end of the day and opened the black notebook, I wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page. 4 more months. 4 months. And I would walk out of there through the front door with everything that was mine, owing nothing to anyone. What I didn't plan for was where the first thread would come from. Because that's where the story really turns. And you're not going to believe who handed it to me. I was never someone who listens to things she's not supposed to hear on purpose. But I learned something in that job. When you're invisible, people say anything in front of you because they forget you're there. It was a Wednesday in October, around 4 in the afternoon. I was steaming dress shirts in the second-floor service room when I heard Brandon's voice from Mr. Douglas's study. The walls were thin, and his voice was up, agitated. Not a normal conversation, an argument. I didn't hear everything. I heard enough. Dad, I had to sign it because the deadline was running out. I signed your name because I couldn't reach you. There was a 48-hour window, the contract was on the table, and the partner needed an answer. It was a business decision. It wasn't a crime. I stopped steaming, stood there with the steamer in the air, silence on the other end. Then Mr. Douglas's voice, lower, harder to catch. You signed my name on a partnership agreement without power of attorney. I know what I did, and it worked. The deal closed. Brandon, that's forgery. Dad, relax. Nothing's going to come of this. The conversation dropped to murmurs and I couldn't hear more, but what I had heard was recorded inside me. Date, time, context. I filed it away with everything else I'd been keeping. A few weeks later, when my friend Keisha, who worked as a paralegal at an employment law firm downtown, asked how the job was going, I told her everything. Not the study conversation, not yet. I told her about the working conditions, the hours, what I'd been paid and what I hadn't. Keisha asked 3 questions and went quiet. Then she said, Vanessa, you know that uncompensated overtime is a wage claim, right? Every hour. I looked at her. I know. I'm waiting for the right moment. She understood, didn't push. The right moment came on a Saturday in December. It was my last day before 2 weeks of paid time off. The first I'd ever taken since starting. I'd requested it in writing. Dr. Patricia had approved it. Everything documented. That Saturday I arrived at 7 as always, did what needed to be done, and at 6, when Dr. Patricia came to have me sign the time-off confirmation, I already had my bag packed and the black notebook inside it. She handed me the envelope. I signed. She said, Have a good rest, Vanessa. I said, Thank you, Dr. Hargrove, for everything. She looked at me for a moment, like she was going to say something, but she didn't. I caught the bus, went back to Koreatown, made coffee, sat on my bed with the black notebook in my lap, and made the list of what I had. $41,200 in savings, 2+ years of uncompensated overtime that Keisha had estimated at $22,600 in potential wage claims, a commercial space in Culver City whose owner had agreed to lease at $2,800 a month with 2 months free to start. Suppliers quoted, LLC formation in progress, name chosen 9 months ago. Vanessa Clean, commercial cleaning services. And one more thing, something I'd been carrying since that Wednesday in October, waiting to understand what to do with it. Brandon's voice in his father's study. I signed your name because I couldn't reach you. Forgery on a business contract. A crime, with a witness. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I never have. But I knew, with the clarity of someone who'd spent 2 years watching everything, that information had value. Not necessarily as a weapon, as protection, as insurance, that when I filed my wage claim, no one was going to try to make me the problem. The first Monday of January, I walked into Keisha's firm with every document I had. Pay stubs, time records, when they existed, screenshots from the household group chat where Dr. Patricia texted me outside of work hours expecting a response, photos with timestamps. Keisha introduced me to Marcus Webb, a senior employment attorney at the firm, 43 years old, steady voice, the kind of professional who doesn't promise what he can't deliver. He listened to everything, went through the documents, did the math, and said, We have a strong claim, uncompensated overtime, off-hours contact without compensation, and one thing I need to confirm with you, were you contacted or expected to be available during your approved time off? I said, twice. I have the screenshots. He said, then the number goes up. We're looking at somewhere between $68,000 and $85,000, depending on what the court awards. I sat in the chair across from his desk, hands in my lap, and didn't let anything show on my face. But inside, it was like my mom's warehouse worker voice, the laughter at that Sunday dinner, Brandon's everyone ends up where they chose to be. All of it was converting into something I could actually use. File it, I said. Dr. Patricia received the demand letter in February. I knew because Keisha called me, and because that same day Dr. Patricia sent me a message, the first direct message in months. Vanessa, can I call you? I responded. Please contact Marcus Webb. His number is in the letter. She didn't write back. But Brandon did respond, not to me. Through the family's attorney, a Mr. Clifford, who called Marcus 3 days later with the tone of someone doing a favor. We can resolve this without going to court. The family is prepared to make an offer. Marcus called me. I listened and said, tell him the offer needs to cover every calculated wage claim, plus damages for off-hours contact during approved leave, plus attorney's fees, and they have 72 hours to accept or decline. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, have you done this before? I said, no, but I studied business. Their counteroffer came in at $34,000. I said no. I sent back $78,000, the floor of what Marcus had calculated, in a single payment within 15 business days, no non-disclosure clause. They took 2 days, then they accepted. But that's where the story really pivots, because the money was one part. The other part came from somewhere I didn't see coming. 3 weeks after the settlement, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Short message. Hi Vanessa, my name is Tamara. I worked at the Hargrove house before you. Someone told me you filed a claim. Is there anything I can help with? I stared at the message for a while. Then I wrote back, how did you hear about me? She said, Keisha. She asked if she could pass along my number. Hope that's okay. It was more than okay. Tamara had worked as a housekeeper at the same house for 2.5 years before me. She'd left without receiving her full final pay. Dr. Patricia had claimed she quit voluntarily. Tamara said she'd been let go. She hadn't filed a claim because she didn't know how, couldn't afford an attorney, and the family had made it clear they'd give her bad references if she caused problems. She had kept everything, pay stubs, texts, time records. Is it too late? She asked. I called Marcus. He said, depends on when. Send me the documents. It was within the statute of limitations. There was still time. Tamara's claim was filed 4 weeks after mine. Different amounts, different circumstances, but the same pattern. A family that believed money purchased silence and that a housekeeper doesn't know how to count. But what I didn't expect, the twist that changed everything for good, was the call Marcus made to me one afternoon in March. Vanessa, I need to tell you something. The Hargrove's attorney called me today. Not about Tamara's claim, about something else. I said nothing. There's a partnership agreement that was executed irregularly by the older son. A new business partner is challenging the validity of the contract. Their attorney wants to know if you have any knowledge of the situation. I breathed slowly. Why would they think I know anything? Because you were in the house, and because they're desperate. I was quiet for a moment. Marcus waited. Marcus, I overheard a conversation in that house. A Wednesday afternoon in October. I wasn't trying to listen. The walls were thin and his voice was loud. I can describe what I heard, when it was, and the full context. A pause. Vanessa, that information could be relevant to proceedings that have nothing to do with your claim. You're not obligated to share anything. I know. But if it's true that he signed a contract using his father's name without authorization, and that hurt a third party, this new business partner, I have no reason to protect someone who told me everyone ends up where they chose to be, while I was on my knees polishing his floor. In the weeks that followed, in a parallel proceeding that had nothing to do with my settled claim, Brandon Hargrove lost the partnership stake he had negotiated using his father's forged signature. The partner unwound the contract with legal documentation. The Hargrove family absorbed a costly renegotiation that became a topic of conversation in the Los Angeles corporate legal circles where Mr. Douglas had built his reputation. And in those circles, reputation is the whole thing. I heard about it through other people. I didn't ask, didn't go looking. My part was done. With the $78,000 from the settlement, plus my $41,000 in savings, plus a small business loan through a community development lender, $18,000 at a below-market rate, I signed the lease on the Culver City space on April 12th, a commercial suite of about 600 square feet with a break room, bathroom, and storage. Real address, LLC active, business bank account open, Vanessa Clean, commercial cleaning services. I was my own first employee. My second was Tamara. She reached out 2 weeks after her claim resolved, also settled, also paid, different amount, but enough. She called on a Thursday night and said directly, "You're building something, aren't you?" I said, "Yes. Do you need a partner?" I thought for exactly 3 seconds. "I do, but a partner works. It's not just a title," she said. I know how to work. It's all I've ever done. Tamara came in with her effort and her settled claim as her stake. We split it 50-50. She took operations, team supervision, quality control, client relations. I took finance, contracts, and planning. Exactly what I'd been studying in those black notebooks at 3 in the morning. First month, 2 contracts, a law firm in Century City and a dental group in Santa Monica. Third month, 5. Sixth month, 10. With 10 steady contracts, we hired 8 employees, with proper documentation, paid time off, sick leave, everything the law required. Every single one, no exceptions, because I knew what it felt like to work without that, and I was never going to do to someone else what had been done to me. By the 8th month of operation, Vanessa Clean was bringing in $94,000 a month in revenue, net margin of 17%. That was the month I bought the car. A luxury sedan, brand new, silver, tan leather interior, 2-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, $250,000, cash. I called my mom on a Thursday afternoon and said, "Mom, I'm coming to Stockton this weekend. There's something I want to show you." She said, "What is it?" "You'll see when I get there." I pulled up in front of her house, the same house on the east side of Stockton where I grew up, the same concrete front steps, the same chain-link fence she'd painted white herself when I was 10, and tapped the horn once. She came to the window first, then to the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel the way she always did. She stood there looking at the car for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "Quiet," in the voice she used when she didn't know how to handle what she was feeling. "That car, what does a car like that cost?" I got out, walked up to her, stood in front of her. $250,000, Mom. Her mouth opened. "Vanessa, and my apartment is worth 10 times that." Silence. It wasn't my apartment yet. It was a 2-bedroom condo in Culver City I'd put a down payment on 3 weeks earlier, 30-year mortgage, 40% down. But it was going to be mine. My name, my money. My mom stood there looking at me for a moment I couldn't measure. Then her eyes filled, not with pride, I think, not just pride, with something more complicated than pride. The look of someone who realizes they were wrong and doesn't know how to say it. She said, "You did all of this, working as a housekeeper?" I said, "Working and planning, and not quitting when you told me I had nothing to show for myself." We stood there in silence on the front steps. Then she said, very quietly, "I didn't say it like that. You said I still took the bus, in front of everyone, at Aunt Cheryl's." She closed her eyes, opened them. "I'm an idiot." "No, Mom, you were scared. For you, doing things right meant something with a guarantee. The warehouse, the union card, the overtime, the pension. What I was doing had no guarantee. You humiliated me because you were terrified of watching me fail." She didn't answer, but she came toward me and hugged me, the way we hadn't hugged in years. Both arms, real, no ceremony. Standing there with my chin on her shoulder, I thought about how the people who love us the most can do the most damage. Not from cruelty, but from fear. And that forgiving isn't the same as forgetting. It's understanding where the mistake came from without letting the mistake decide what comes next. The next day, my phone didn't stop ringing. Cousin Denise, who'd posted a photo of her Corolla on Instagram the day she bought it. Aunt Cheryl, who just wanted to check in. Uncle Raymond, who texted to ask if I was looking for investors. Friends who'd gone quiet. Contacts I barely recognized by their numbers. The ones I genuinely cared about, I called back with warmth. The rest I left on read, because I learned, and it took a while, that applause that only comes after success isn't applause, it's convenience. The people who were in my corner when I was the woman on the bus, those are the ones who matter. Today, Vanessa Clean has 19 active contracts, 15 employees on payroll, and a third partner, an operations manager who joined early in year 2 and helped us build the infrastructure I couldn't have built alone that quickly. We're expanding into the South Bay because the Los Angeles metro area has more commercial real estate than it has people to clean it with consistency and professionalism. My mom came to the opening of our second location. She sat in the corner with a bottle of sparkling water, watching everything in silence. When I passed by her near the end of the evening, she caught my arm and said, without preamble, "You always knew what you were doing." I said, "I always did." She said, "I should have believed in you sooner." I said, "It doesn't matter anymore, Mom." And it was true. Before I wrap up, there's something I need to tell you. Because this channel doesn't exist just to move you, it exists to inform you too. I was a housekeeper with a documented work arrangement. And even with that, I let things slide because I didn't know all of my rights. I found out later, with Keisha and with Marcus. And when I did, everything changed. Because there are things every domestic worker deserves. It doesn't matter what country she lives in, what house she works in, or how much money the person who hired her has. She deserves a contract. She deserves to be paid what was agreed, in full and on time. She deserves rest days. She deserves time off. She deserves protection if she gets sick or injured on the job. She deserves to be treated with respect inside that house, the same as in any other workplace. That is not a favor. That is the minimum. And the minimum is not negotiable. Workplace harassment in domestic work is real, even though a lot of people act like it isn't. When someone uses economic power to humiliate you repeatedly, to put you down in front of others, to threaten you with firing as a way of keeping you in line, to ignore you or make you feel invisible as a pattern, that isn't being demanding. That is abuse. And it has consequences. You can prove it. Save every text, every voicemail, every note. Write down dates and what happened. Ask someone you trust to document what they witnessed. Every detail you save today could be what changes everything tomorrow. If you're going through something like this, or you know someone who is, reach out for help. There are domestic worker advocacy organizations, free legal aid clinics, and people who understand exactly what you're experiencing and can walk you through your options. You are not alone, and you don't have to figure this out alone. One more thing I need to say directly. If someone uses their money as an excuse to treat you like you're worth less than you are, that is not authority. That is abuse. And abuse has a name and has consequences. If I had understood that sooner, I would have acted sooner. That's why I'm telling you now. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. It was hard to tell, not because of the wealthy family, not because of the checked-out employer, not because of the arrogant son. It was hard because of my mom. Because the pain that starts inside your own home cuts differently, but it also teaches differently. If you have someone in your family who doubted you, who laughed at your bus pass, who called your dream unrealistic, who let their own fear become your ceiling, tell me in the comments, have you forgiven them? Did you get to show them? Or are you still in the middle of the journey? Share this video with someone who needs to know that the road is real, even when the person standing right next to them can't see it yet. Stories like mine exist to remind you, no one, no matter how much money they have, no matter how close the blood, has the right to make you feel like less than you are. I'll see you next time.